Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely day. Today I would like to discuss a polarizing figure and a polarizing topic in order to try and demonstrate a point that I think is more important than the polarizing figure or the polarizing topic. I realize that many people are not going to be able to make it to the end of this video before screaming in my comment section. So all I would ask is that you listen to the end to get to my point before you scream in the comment section. Just this once. So what we wanted to discuss today is the death of Kevin Samuels and how this has been covered in the media, because I want to discuss why it is that you have so many people nowadays that are willing to believe virtually anything when it comes from unauthoritative sources. I want to discuss how trust is eroded in traditional media institutions, and I want to try and encourage this to end. Today I want to discuss this person's death. So this is an article from the New York Times. Kevin Samuels, a polarizing YouTube personality, dies at 57. I'll read a couple of excerpts from the article, and then we're also going to discuss what's not in the article or in many of the other mainstream media articles that are discussing the death of this particular polarizing figure. They quote him saying, "Successful men cheat." He recently wrote on Instagram, "Either you deal with it or you don't." Chorus of detractors who condemned his views as outdated and cruel. The messages were repugnant to many, especially women, who said his views were misogynistic and promoted a brand of masculinity that harmed the men who listened to him. Then 30,000 people signed an online petition asking YouTube and Instagram to remove Mr. Samuels, saying he had galvanized a community of men of all races and nationalities in the outspoken hatred of women. Kevin Samuels has basically made a profit and made his profile consistently perpetuating harmful stereotypes about black men and women, a journalist said, adding that a lot of his rhetoric and commentary was rooted in misogyny. Now, I don't want to single out the New York Times here, although admittedly I did in my community post, because most other outlets are doing, again, something similar to what I did in junior high school, which is I would just word the spark notes in my own words, so I wouldn't have to write my own book report rather than actually read the book. And what I'm noticing on most of the media coverage of this particular individual is that most of the articles are really just kind of using a thesaurus to say the exact same thing. I did not follow Mr. Samuels. I wasn't a subscriber to his channel, although my personal trainer has been. I don't really watch, I honestly have avoided this entire section of the internet because frankly, watching a lot of this stuff just depresses me, just from just being honest with you. So I haven't watched any of his stuff, nor did I hear of him up until this happened and showed up in my newsfeed. So I decided to actually visit his channel and arrange the videos from order of most popular, most viewed to least viewed, and just check out a couple of them to get an idea of who this person actually was. And I wanted to share just couple of excerpts with you and explain what was not put into most of these articles. This over here is a video of a woman who is about, I think she's like 28 or 29 years old, and she's saying she's not finding the men that she's looking for. She's looking for a man that's making about $400,000 to $500,000 a year. She didn't really want to have kids, and now she's saying she may want to have kids because she needs them or because this may be necessary to attract a particular man. And so she's looking for a man that's making an amount of money that is considerably more than the amount of money that she's making, and she's not finding it. Kevin asks her, so if you would like to, who do you think makes that type of money? And she goes, well, probably men in their 40s, because that's literally in the top 1% of all men, and men tend to make more money as they age, you're going to make more money at 40 usually than at 20. And then he asks, what do those men want? And she goes, well, probably kids. And you were not really into having kids. So do you think this may be part of the problem? And she's, okay, yeah, I could see that. And then the point that I found particularly interesting is when he says those type of men may be, I'll just let him say it and we'll react to it in a moment. Yeah, so let's just switch over here.
So the kind of men you're dating probably are these guys who want a woman to do the power couple thing. Y'all on some 50-50 splitting the bill kind of shit, which is fine.
Oh no.
Okay, so you mean, okay, so.
When asked, how would you feel about, sharing the bill with somebody if you're looking to date a man of that stature that makes $500K a year or so? No. He is pointing out that some of these expectations that she has may be unrealistic, whether it is to be dating a man in their 40s that is happy to be with somebody who does not want kids, or whether it is no, as a reaction to splitting a bill. There's another video over here where there's a woman who makes $50,000 a year, and she physically cringes at the idea of being with a man that makes $75,000 a year in the same manner that I usually would when I walk into an apartment with stale cat litter, and then she takes her face and puts it in her hands. That's how painful it would be to be with a man that only makes $25,000 a year more than her.
But you're also talking about a quality of life to where you making 50, he's making 70. Y'all not living in Buckhead. You're not driving BMW. You driving Honda Civics. Michael, you're not going to Hermes and Dior. Don't be going over shops in Buckhead. Yeah. Every now and then, y'all may be able to go to Papa though on your anniversary or something.
Right.
Can you really live that life?
I don't think so.
Exactly. I'm looking at you now. So
I don't think so. He points out in this video as well that some of the expectations she may have are maybe a little bit unrealistic. Also, just, again, she wanted to be with somebody who's making about $500,000 a year, who also would be putting the kids in daycare so that she could have a job that makes $50,000 a year while working all day. He points out that this may not be the life that somebody who has done the work necessary to make $500,000 a year is looking for. And there's also that cringe. There's another conversation here that I'm not going to play because it causes me physical pain to listen to it. I was not able to make it through the entire video because, again, I wanted to kind of jump off a bridge after listening to a good portion of it, where there's a woman who is with a man. She breaks up with him, no child with him, no marriage, and she fully expects that he pay her bill for her car. So she has, I believe it was a high-end Mercedes, and for an expensive fancy loft apartment in an expensive city. They're not married, no kids, but he should continue paying for that. And Kevin points out, as politely as he can, that this is probably an unrealistic expectation and that this is something that do you understand why people see this as kind of weird? Now, what did I learn from this? Besides the fact that since these women are in my geographic area and age group, that this is my dating pool, meaning that I'm likely going to be single for the rest of my life because I don't make $500,000 a year, and even if I did, I would not want to put up with this. What did I learn from this? That what most of these journalistic outlets are saying when they're talking about his content, that they're lying by omission to a degree, because they're not mentioning that his objectively most popular content is when he has these honest conversations with people where he says, tell me where you are in life, tell me what you're looking for, what are your expectations. He has them explain it and then politely points out that these expectations are out of line with reality. These are the most popular conversations, and there's a reason that they're as popular as they are, and there's also a reason that this is being left out from the discussion about his death by almost every major mainstream outlet that has actually covered it. Including quotes from these conversations, or including the actual content of these conversations, would make him seem like a person that is less evil, that is more reasonable. That's something that your average person could watch and go, oh wow, I actually agree with him. And that can't happen. One of the common threads here is that he has conversations with people that have expectations that are slightly unreasonable, and he points out that these are unreasonable. The reason I bring this up is because these are the most popular videos on his channel. The videos where he has discussions with women that might have unrealistic expectations, and he politely and cordially points out that these are unrealistic expectations. Now, does he have conversations where he says some of the stuff they mentioned in the article? Yes, and there are things that he said in these videos that I disagree with. I disagree with the way that he browbeats and berates callers. I disagree with the fact that when somebody starts talking and actually making a point that may cut against what he's saying, he starts saying, oh, this is my show, you're talking over me. I disagree with he made some reference to I agree with not putting people on a pedestal, but I disagree with the idea that the cherry on top is the man, not the woman. I think he made a mention of that in some other video. I don't agree with everything this dude says. The important thing here is that what makes his content objectively the most popular, because that is the most viewed content on his channel, got mentioned in none of these news articles. There was not one news article that mentioned that some of his most viewed videos are from people who expect to date somebody that makes 10 times their salary and have everything be 110% on their terms, and that this may just be mildly unrealistic as an expectation. None of the articles that I read from any mainstream media outlet discussing his death, when they were discussing his content and how misogynistic and how horrible it was, ever discussed that one of his most popular conversations is him explaining that after you break up with a man, expecting him to pay $4,000 to $6,000 a month to you to maintain your lifestyle when you were not married and not have kids together is something that's somewhat unrealistic. This part of the story is not told. Now, if you want to tell the story of the bad things that he says, or the things he says that you believe are misogynistic, or the things that are actually misogynistic, then by all means do so, but I think it's important to tell a full story. The reason it's important to tell a full story is because when you don't tell the full story, when I have to go to his channel to figure out that this is the content that he's actually most known for, these are the discussions that are actually going on this channel, what happens is I lose trust for every single outlet that did not bring this up. And the problem we have nowadays, and the point that I want to get to, this is something that often shows up on Destiny streams, I enjoy his political streams and commentary, is that media literacy right now is at an all-time low. And admittedly, I do agree with him on some of these points, that there are people that believe all sorts of crazy shit simply because they distrust mainstream media. I agree with him on that point, and I also do agree that there are a lot of people that will trust random commentators instead of people that actually have authority, intelligence, information, evidence, and some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Pedigree and reputation when it comes to delivering reputable information. And the reason that people are turning to these weird sources is because they'll read an article like that just gets something that they know innately so wrong that they go, how could I trust you on anything else? Let me give you one example of this type of distrust. When it comes to what's going on in, let's say, Ukraine or something like that, I don't have an effing clue. I fix MacBooks in an office. That, like, literally, I don't know anything about foreign policy. I've never said I know anything about foreign policy. Yet many people will say that they would trust my takes on foreign policy more than what you get from CNN or other journalistic institutions where they actually have boots on the ground and reporters right there to figure out what's going on, speak with the president, speak with members of the military, speak with the civilians, record it, and actually show you what's going on. Why could that possibly be the case? Well, one thing that happened several months ago, this is just one of many examples. CNN did an article on the new district attorney and a memo that he had released on how he was going to prosecute crime. And he said that they're not going to prosecute certain crimes. They brought up things like prostitution, low-level marijuana charges, stuff like that, stuff that most people, whether you're conservative or liberal, will agree in 2022 you probably shouldn't be going to prison for. However, the article did not bring up the spicier parts of this memo. It completely missed them, which are that, let's say, I think it was first or second degree robbery was going to be moved down to a petty misdemeanor. I read through the actual source document, which is the memo, and I went through that memo in a 1-hour video where I went over the fact that that CNN completely neglected all the spicy parts of the memo. All of the serious crimes that are now going to be not prosecuted or prosecuted as petty misdemeanors, which is not what I think robbery should be prosecuted as, were left out. What that does is that makes people say, wait, I can't trust you now. The problem here is that since some random fuckface idiot on YouTube told the truth about something that they lied by omission about, now, to a certain subsection of people, I have more trust than CNN. But I don't have the intelligence of every single one of the commentators there. I don't have access to all the information they do. I don't have access to boots on the ground in all these different countries to be able to give you coverage of what's going on in times of war or politics or everything else. But because they decided to post something, whether because it was factually incorrect just because they wanted to be first, or whether it was because they were actually trying to push a certain narrative by kind of keeping some information a little, hidden under the table so that people wouldn't protest it, they managed to lose trust. And when this happens, it's not going to, be something where you do it once and you lose all your trust. But when it happens 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times with these smaller things, you wind up with a media landscape where people wind up more willing to trust random people streaming on Twitch about politics or news or war or taxes or whatever else is going on in the world than actual journalistic institutions. And the reason I bring this up is because you will hear so many people say, why is the world this way? Why do people believe fake news? Why do people trust fake news? These sites are ridiculous. And you're right. Many of these websites that are considered fake news, they have either bad citations of bad data or just no citations at all. They'll have a citation, but they will refer to a faulty citation. So they'll say something, they'll have a citation, hoping nobody checks it, and the citation will be to something else altogether. Or they'll just make shit up, and people will believe it because that one website, that one commentator, that one person told them the truth when somebody else lied to them in a real manner. And once you do that, it really is easy to them. That person is now the person that they trust into the future, when they shouldn't be. I don't think people should be saying in my comment section, Lewis, I trust you more than the New York Times. Lewis, I trust you more than CNN. Trust me when I talk about MacBook repair. Take a grain of salt when I talk about just about anything else. Honestly, don't even trust me about MacBook repair. Ask Paul Daniels or Tim Herman or Jessa Jones or Mark Schaefer to make sure that what I'm telling you is correct. I'm a dude that yells into a camera on the internet. And the fact that other people that yell into a camera on the internet have the level of authority that they do over multi-million and billion-dollar journalistic and news outlets, in my opinion, is because of reporting like this, where they do it to themselves. When you can objectively prove with a very small issue in a very easy way that you were lied to, it's very easy to then assume with an issue where you can't prove that you're being lied to, that you're also being lied to. If I can demonstrate that the coverage of Kevin Samuels was incorrect from many of these outlets, and it's fairly easy for me to do, many people may simply assume, well, What about all the other coverage that they have? That's probably all crap too, when we're talking about things that are virtually impossible for normal, average, everyday people to be able to verify for themselves. Your average person watching this video is probably not going to be able to fly to a war zone in Ukraine to be able to figure out exactly what's happening, to figure out which news outlet they can trust. They often use other issues as a proxy for how much they trust a particular network. And as long as many mainstream media outlets continue to do this to themselves, you can expect that their trust will continue to decline in the eyes of the populace, even when they actually do get things right. I will often tell people on this channel, I actually do read the New York Times. Many people who are more right-leaning hate the New York Times. They were one of the first to report on all the Clinton Foundation stuff and all the potential things in the 2016 election that may be reason for concern having her as a candidate. All that stuff got reported, in addition to all the opinion pieces that often make me puke. But again, how can you expect people to trust you that way when a lot of your reporting is based on opinion and narrative rather than reality? And here's the thing. You're more than welcome to continue doing that. I'm not going to tell you how to run a multi-million-dollar paper, nor am I going to tell you how to run a multi-million to billion-dollar news outlet. You clearly know what you're doing more than I do because you're making way more money at it, and God bless you for doing that. The thing is, if you want people's trust to be retained in your network or your paper, it's going to be very, very important that you not neglect important details like this in your reporting. If you leave out something like, oh, by the way, one of the reasons that people love these conversations, some of the most popular ones are where he's telling somebody that makes $50,000 a year that maybe going for somebody who makes $500,000 a year and then making all these demands for them might not be the most realistic thing in the world. When you neglect that, you lose the trust of your readership. I don't even like Kevin Samuels, but who I dislike even more are all of these disingenuous bloggers posing as journalists that are eroding the trust in all of these institutions. There is a reason that people believe all sorts of whack job, crazy shit that they hear from conspiracy theorists from every corner of the internet, and there's a reason that people believe all this type of crazy shit that they read from outlets that have little to no credibility. Because that outlet that has little to no credibility had credibility on one issue that mattered to that person, where they were able to point out where all these mainstream outlets were lying. And once that happens, it's really difficult to get that trust back. But more importantly, regardless of whether the stuff that's posted by that particular outlet may be written at a third grade level, may not have any citations or have horrible citations or just make things up altogether, they now have the trust of that reader that you lost because you decided that it was more important to you to perpetuate a narrative than to perpetuate the truth. I don't care what you think of Kevin Samuels. I don't care if you think he's a great person or whether you think he's an asshole. I don't care. All I ask is that when you cover these types of issues, that you do your best to portray the person that he was, particularly when you're talking about somebody who's dead, who can't defend themselves anymore, in the most genuine and honest way possible. And make no mistake, I am not asking you to do this for the sake of Kevin Samuels. I'm not asking you to give an honest take on what he did, why he is known, after he dies, because I want you to care about Kevin Samuels. I want you to care about your readers and your viewership. And I want you to care about all the misinformation and garbage that you're making it easier for them to digest by pushing them away to outlets that tell them the truth about one issue where they're knowledgeable, that will then be able to provide them all sorts of misinformation on everything else because you lost their trust. Think of the readers and the viewers. This is about more than just your opinions or your petty disdain for a man that makes these videos on the internet. It's about media literacy as a whole and how this is all going to be going down the tubes if this is the direction that we're going in. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. As always, I hope you learned something.